The ruinous powers care nothing for why a mortal might fall into their worship. They will trick, coerce, and snare whoever they can, for each fallen soul makes them a little stronger. The faith of mankind is different. We're not tricked into the love of Sigmar. Our faith is no snare, nor can a man be coerced into a life of holiness. We must fight through our own doubt to see the truth, just as a man must fight to crest the summit of a mountain. Take away that doubt, take away that struggle, and we'd be no better than the raving fallen who gibber at the sight of visions and cheap magics.
In the current year, now the cult of Sigmar has gained the power that it has, Sigmar is the Empire, and the Empire is Sigmar. He of course was the founder of the Empire and its first ruler. With this ascension to godhood that he has since made, he became a legendary forebear, worshipped by the folk of the Empire as a stern, vengeful warrior god whose covenant with his people is to defend them as long as the principles upon which his empire was founded upon continue to stand. This is why the people of the Empire refer to themselves as Sigmar's folk, or the sons of Sigmar, and why the Emperor is referred to as the heir of Sigmar, regardless of his or her ancestry or religious beliefs. Sigmar himself never claimed godhood or immortality at any time in his life. Indeed, he was in every sense a man of the people, fighting alongside his men on the front line, eating their food and otherwise living very much akin to them when on the march, much like Attila the Hun. Like many of the ancient tribesmen, Sigmar was the most devout Ulrician, and would often attribute his successes on the battlefield to the favour of the wolf god. Ironically, for a man who was Ulric's most pious servant, the cult of Sigmar has long been in contention with the cult of Ulric, despite worshipping Sigmar as a god. The cult of Ulric claimed that Sigmarite's heretical ways have driven the empire from its true god, while the Sigmarites are quick to decry the Ulricians as nothing more than primitive barbarians who worship an uncaring deity. Nonetheless, this level of conflict only exists between the hardliners of each cult, and for the most part, the cults of Sigmar and Ulric maintain a civil enough level of mutual, if unspoken, respect. All gods are great, but it is Sigmar who is beloved above all by many in the Empire, for he walked as a man amongst them and founded their great empire. It is said by the citizenry of the Empire that it is Sigmar who is perceived to watch over them with greater care than all the other, more distant deities. Such is this sense of vigil from a high being, that the worship of Sigmar takes place throughout imperial society, and often his faith is inseparable from daily life within the Empire. While it is true that the other gods possess great worldly power and secular influence over the Empire, none are entwined more deeply into the very fabric of the imperial identity than Sigmar, and it is not uncommon for his faith and followers to permeate the imperial politics and life. While other gods may possess mighty warrior priests and devoted Knight Templar orders in their own right, the wars of the Empire are Sigmar's personal battles. While it may be the nobility and the Emperor who declare war, it is the common man's faith in Sigmar that drives him to take up the sword and take his place amongst the battle line, and it is the word of the warrior priests of Sigmar that instill him with the courage to meet the horrors that seek to overwhelm him. The followers of Sigmar are singularly devoted to proving themselves worthy of their lord's holy legacy, and to protect his empire from the adversaries of men. Defense is the watchword of the Sigmarites. Defense of the empire, defense of their people, defense of their hearts, minds, and souls. So watchful are they that the Sigmarites veer often to paranoia and superstition, always wary of Sigmar's disapproval, or looking for any sign of the handiwork of those that would seek to corrupt. Chaos never sleeps, so say the men of Sigmar, and so never does the cult rest in its vigil. The favour of Sigmar allows his servants to scour his enemies from the earth. Whether it be calling down holy fire to purge the greenskins, scourging the undead from their dark sorcery, or bringing his sanctified wrath against the terrors of the North, the powers of Sigmar have always been evident in providing a supernatural means to combat such horrific foes. Yet his true gifts to his people are those of healing and hope. His greatest mercy to them was to unite them under the indisputable proof that they could be something more. Every day he grants hopes to his people, and pride in their noble heritage that they might summon the strength to overcome their foes, and ultimately cleanse their blood, body and soul from the dark influence of chaos. Alongside Ulrich, Sigmar watches over the men of the Reich when they ride to war, and alongside Ulrich does he bellow and roar for death and glory. And should those of the faithful die, he shall be ascended into the halls of Sigmar's realm, where he shall fight alongside him in the eternal struggle of safeguarding humanity against the ever-growing threat of the forces of chaos. Like most Empire folk, Sigmarites are insular, superstitious and suspicious, but they view this as a sensible reaction to the corrupt world in which they live. Their self-appointed duty as guardians of the Empire and its people has brought them into contact with all manner of evil, which they have dutifully recorded in a sealed library found deep within the cult's high temple. Thus, much like the dwarfs, a race they revere as Sigmar's strongest allies, Sigmarites never forget and fully trust none. This, they claim, is a paranoia not born of fear or ignorance, but of experience. Mental fortitude and defensive tactics are of paramount importance to Sigmarites, who view open assault or loose thinking as open gates for corruption and heresy. However, nothing is more important than defending the empire Sigmar created, and they are willing to go to almost any length, even open blind assault, to ensure this. The cult also prizes strength and strong leadership, qualities they associate with Sigmar himself. They use these traits to promote the same strength amongst the folk of the Empire, and strike at the heart of heresy, the influence of the dark gods, wherever it may lie. Though every temple has its own traditions for initiating new members into the cult, the general process varies little. First, the novitiate, the Sigmarite term for initiate, is accepted into an order by a priest, an event that is often marked with ritual shaving. Next, they are taught the ways of Sigmar. Finally, when training is completed, the novitiate is tested by a higher-ranking member of the cult. The temples only accept novitiates when young, but theoretically, anyone called to Sigmar, regardless of age, can join the cult. Those temples that practice ritual shaving have many different traditions, but hammer or comet-shaped tonsures are common. Novitiates rarely have any free time between daily prayers and degrading chores that they perform. What little they do have is often spent in contemplation of sacred texts. Many temples have a master of novitiates who leads weekly lessons in history, theology, literacy, and dwarf lore, but it is also common to attach novitiates to a priest who acts as their father, in inverted commas, and teaches them what they need to know using whatever, often brutal methods that he prefers. Eventually, when their superiors deem that the time is right, novitiates are tested. Common tests include perfectly reciting the 12 prayers of righteousness or singing the canticles of Sigmar without error, followed by intensive questioning by high-ranking members of the cult. However, there is no standard test. The tests can take many forms. Some temples in southern Averland demand novitiates to kill a greenskin and carve the Litany of Great Deeds onto its chest. One Sturlander flagellant order subjects all novitiates to the Rite of the Three Brothers after a 3-day fast, which is considerably more painful than it sounds. No two cultists of Sigmar are the same. The varying orders, individual temples, and widely divergent local traditions demand Sigmar's representatives wear a broad array of different ceremonial outfits and cultivate some truly bizarre hairstyles. The Order of the Silver Hammer's warrior priests are almost always wearing yellow-detailed black robes over protective leathers. Sacred breastplates emblazoned with griffins, comets, or crosses, and wide, high-necked gorgets are the preferred choices of armour, but cheaper chainmail is often worn in their stead. Hair is commonly shaved when a novitiate is elevated to the order, although some priests allow patches to grow back, where they carefully shave holy symbols or solemn liturgies. The different monasteries of the Order of the Anvil vary in their required garb and hairstyles. Simple grey or black habits are common, although brown is known in the east of the Empire, and green or orange are worn in some isolated monasteries of Talabecland and Reichland. Hair is usually shaved, with novitiates tonsured, but this again varies, with some monasteries demanding that the hair grow wild, have stripes shaved through it, or be caught in hundreds of tight braids. Wide, high-necked collars are also common, mirroring the gorgets of the warrior priests. The massive Order of the Torch is even more diverse. Black robes may be standard, with brown and grey also common, but some temples wear white, orange, red, or even purple robes, as dictated by local traditions and superstitions, although each variance requires at some point permission from the Grand Theogonist. High, wide collars are again common, although far from universal, as are shaved heads. The typical hammers, comets, griffins, holy seals, and prayer parchments are usually displayed in one fashion or another, although some temples teach that such open displays of faith idolize the objects rather than glorifying Sigmar. Another common tradition is to wear holy books, sometimes at the waist, sometimes upon the back, as a symbolic burden. This is always taken to extremes by some priests, who wear miniature holy texts on their foreheads to protect their minds from heresy, tying them in place with strips of leather, almost like a tinfoil hat. The smaller Order of the Cleansing Flame tightly controls its ceremonial dress in the same way it carefully monitors its members. Robes are black, detailed in red, and hair is cropped close to the skull, with elaborate tonsils sported by ranking members of the order. Floor-length, hooded, black robes are also worn, although novitiates may not raise the hood. Unlike the other primary orders, this ceremonial garb is normally only worn on important occasions. When travelling, cleansing flames wear whatever clothes allow them to fulfill their order's purpose, which include dressing in the garb of other orders or disguising themselves as peasants or travelling merchants. No matter what they wear, all members of the order own a holy amulet with a single flame in its centre. This is the badge of their order, used to prove that they are on Sigmar's business. Cultists of Sigmar have two primary salutes. The first is the V-finger salute. This sign is reversed to be used as a taunt and to insult Sigmar's enemies.
To you I will give the gilded sword that jingles from rings of gold, and strike with it in battle as you will. In the battlefield you will conquer. So many leagues, so many leagues, will you marry me for all that I'll gladly give thee? You may only answer with a yes or no. Gifts such as these I would gladly receive, were the pagan maid turned and ran out the door. She wailed and shrieked so loudly had I gotten that handsome young knight from my torment